For those of you not familiar with what Korbit does, so Korbit's an AI-powered code review platform, gives developers instant context-aware feedback for every pull request, reducing bottlenecks, improving code quality, upskilling engineers as they do their job. And I'm happy to introduce the other two hosts I have with me today. Amir Mala is CTO at InVita, and Avery Kraus is the training and product manager at InVita. Avery, you want to give a little intro on what InVita does?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us today, Aaron and Corbett. So, InVita Healthcare Technologies is an organization that has been making software for the healthcare industry for decades. We primarily serve a few specific supply chains. So, we make software for blood and plasma centers across the United States. If any of you attending have ever donated blood in the United States, your blood has probably passed through one of our software products. We also make software for implant and explant organizations and ORs. We make software for donation and transplant OPOs, and organ procurement organizations and hospital centers. And we also make software for DNA and forensics organizations and law enforcement agencies. We are happy to be in this industry, particularly these specific supply chains, because we feel like everything that we do ends up touching a patient's life, or touching someone's life at a moment when they need good software to rely on to save their life or make their world a little bit better that day.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us. Amir, tell us a little about yourself and your role at DaVita.
Sure. I'm a relatively new add to InVita. The picture and bio seem like they're 10 years old, so I'm clearly much older now. But yeah, I've been building software as a service applications for a long time, and at InVita, like Avery said, we're building a lot of technology to support kind of a disparate sense of different places in the healthcare world. We have some FDA regulated products and a lot of not FDA regulated products, and we're looking for ways to optimize and build code to kind of accomplish the mission more efficiently and faster. And so we're happy to be talking to you today and to your potential customers about how Corbett has helped us.
Amazing. Thanks for being here. Avery, I remember when NVIDIA started using Korbit last fall. Tell us about the challenges your team was facing and what drew you to Korbit, that process of discovery.
Yeah, we kind of undertook a process late last year to start examining what AI tools could help us bridge the gap and get software out the door faster. Obviously, since November of 22, when ChatGPT exploded the world here, there's software for code development, there's software for quality, there's software for testing, and all these LLM softwares. And one of the areas that we thought we could make pretty quick use of is in the code review and quality space. So I kind of started to look at different software opportunities in that area.
Amazing. It's been a great relationship working with you. I remember I was at a user conference that you guys hosted last month, and one thing that really stood out to me was the tension between like a desire to innovate quickly because patients' lives are on the line, and the faster you guys can get your products out to market, the better for everyone. But then also a need for safety and reliability in the products you build. Again, because patients' lives are on the line. Amir, how does your team think about that kind of that tension?
Yeah, it's I've been in the non-healthcare space in like kind of the commercial world, and releasing software directly into production, with some testing or good amount of testing is the norm. But in the healthcare space, there's a lot of additional procedures and kind of like, some of them are like psychological teddy bears, which how I look at validation environments. But they're important in order to kind of like make sure that you have a good a set of data. So the way that, it's kind of a little bit the tension that we feel is definitely, AI is very nascent technology, and in the healthcare space, it is risky to introduce kind of code that hasn't been thoroughly vetted into production. And so we're comfortable, having kind of like I guess an AI sandwich where there's humans on the front end doing software development, and I don't think that there's, a place where that stops happening. And then there's humans before we release to customers that are doing a lot of QA and validation and manual testing through a much more rigorous process than the commercial world usually has. And in the middle, it is kind of like a safe space to try AI, and that I think is a great place where Corbit fits in. Because it's not fully exposed directly to the customer, and you can still keep your QA processes in place. And what it does is it accelerates the ability for us to test things faster. So yeah, the tension's real. It's very unique to the healthcare space because of the consequences of any kind of mistakes. But with a tool like Corbit that is kind of in the middle of your more experienced engineers and your processes, it fits in really well.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, we hear from a lot of our customers that, the value is not just in the speed. I mean, speed's important, especially because it, allows a developer to get feedback without having to do context switching because the reviews are coming back in a matter of, a couple minutes rather than hours or days. But also that, the kinds of things that we can catch with AI, are it's a different lens than what the humans are going to catch. The humans are going to see things that we don't see, but we're going to see things that the human review won't see in a review.
Yeah,
And the two really are complementary.
Yeah, I think that's a huge advantage of being able to offload some of these things to AI. You know, a lot of developers, especially the experiences, if you have staff engineers or senior software engineers, they're working on, they're your most valuable kind of like, institutional knowledge that you have for software development. And there is a sense of developer fatigue if, you're kind of looking at the same basic issues over and over again. And for us to be able to eliminate that, speeds up the code review cycle. Aaron, we talked about shift left as a concept that, like really makes a lot of sense for us. Instead of code reviews typically being kind of like a pass the hot potato of whatever the ticket that we're working on, Corbett immediately executes the code review and then kind of gives feedback. And even if it might not be every single thing, it's stuff that the original developer can look at the way they would look at a unit test or kind of, delinting of code, where it's kind of like you won't you can gate it or not into getting into the repo or doing, starting off the pull request, but you can self-serve before it actually makes it into code review by addressing a bunch of issues that Corbett finds like at the beginning of the cycle, as opposed to kind of the back and forth of, code review, fix this, you missed this. And that allows our SSEs and our staff engineers to actually focus on, more institutional knowledge related things that aren't just delinting or you should use this loop or this is inefficient. And that saves us a lot of time and actually makes us a lot more productive and helps us actually catch things a lot faster. It's enhances our QA to a big degree.
A lot of our customers have, even gone as far as made internal rules that, Corbett has to do a review before you bother a human colleague. I don't know if you guys have gone that far yet, but
Makes sense. I mean, it's on the table. Like, it's
yeah.
definitely a thing for that, we are maybe just procedurally behind
Yeah.
in
No,
changing,
it's a
but
big step,
makes a
but
lot
it's
of sense.
Avery, I have to give you credit. I remember when you rolled out Corbett to your team, I remember it being, a tour de force of user engagement. Um, any insights you can share there with the audience about how to get a large team like yours to embrace an AI tool like Corbett?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number one thing that our folks uh, wanted to know when we started rolling out these AI tools was, oh, is AI going to take our jobs, right? And we had to stress to them throughout the entire process that, just as Amir was saying, you can't replace institutional knowledge. You can't replace, well, there's a reason we do it this weird way with a robot. Like, that's just what's going that you need to have happen. And so our rollout process was pretty straightforward. We started by piloting this. Before we rolled it out to the whole team, we picked a developer who we knew was kind of AI friendly and AI forward, and just started running Corbett on pull requests for that one person, just so we could kind of see how the system works, get some PRs back, kind of see what the signal to noise ratio is in that. And once I had that kind of data of somebody who had been using it in a real with real PRs, we then held a meeting across the entire division's engineering staff, and we basically outlined kind of our principles of what this was. I introduced them to the tool, and I introduced it to them as Corporate's here to help, and it's here to help as your zeroth peer review. Think of it as a peer that is taking that first run at your code. And if the only thing it does is catch what I call the duh issues, you forgot a semicolon where you needed one, or you had a typo, or things like that, things that you'd hope you catch, but you glance over the same code 1,000 times, your eyes start to fuzz over, right? And if all it does is catches that, then that means you didn't do the commits, do the pull request, send it to your peer. Your peer did their scan. They found the typo. They sent it back to you. That whole loop is just gone. However, many of those loops might happen when humans are involved, which immediately kind of, oh yeah, I kind of get why we would want to do that. Then the other thing that we made very clear was this is not a replacement for you, and it is not the gospel truth. Just because the robot says that there is this issue does not mean that it's legitimate. Korbit actually gives really solid feedback, but there are sometimes reasons you do things the way you do it. Or it doesn't necessarily have the context of, it knows what it knows from the repo, but there's this microservice over here that works in a very specific way. And so we said, this is not a substitute for the knowledge that you have about why our software does what it does. So you also cannot simply take the word of Korbit. I don't think Korbit would even ask you to do that. I said you have to use your knowledge, your insight, your understanding of our software to do that. And once everybody kind of locked those things in, and started seeing the PR reviews hit, started seeing the summaries that generate, which are super handy for me when I don't understand what the code is doing. Once they started to see those things kind of hit, I think everybody was like, okay, I get it. And then it just became another piece of the process. It's not, this almost sounds weird to say, it's not special. It's part of what they do now. And so it doesn't create stoppages or create like road bumps. It is just simply the next thing that happens is you get a Korbit review and you look at the comments and you go, yep, nope, yep, nope, and you fix what it says if you need to.
I'll point out that one of the things we've really tried hard to do is not introduce it as a change in the process. It's one small step that gets added to your existing process, but it's basically, the same as you always did as a team. You don't have to actually do much in terms of process engine re-engineering. It's important. PRs are there for a reason, and we're working with those. I actually also want to give you the credit for the coining the term zeroth reviewer. I've used that many, many times since then, and it hits every time. Appreciate it. Amir, I know in your previous roles, you've experimented with other similar tools in the space. What do you think makes Korbit stand out from the competition?
Yeah, so Korbit was partially in place when I got here, and I have experience with SonarQube, which isn't exactly the same thing, and CodeRabbit, which is a lot closer to Korbit. And um, you know, coming into a new organization, I'm always like, I'm skeptical. It's like, what is this thing? What is the value of it? And so I had the most critical eye of Korbit, and immediately I was really impressed by a couple of things that Korbit does I have not seen in other places. The first one is, it does a kind of reasoning of like why it came up with its explanation, which I really like for my more junior engineers, so that they understand. Like it's not just like, okay, this is wrong, or look at this line. And a lot of our security remediation tools don't give a lot of explanation. It's like this is a problem. Here's a CVE, blah. And then you have to kind of figure it out. Well, with Korbit, it kind of explains the context and everything, and it puts everyone on the same page about like what it's being looked at and why it's reviewed, which I like. Our senior engineers were skeptical at the beginning when I talked to them, but like what is the value of Korbit? And they would say things like well, I don't know if it's going to find anything that's actually useful, and it kind of slowly won them over. And a lot of that is because Korbit accepts feedback on like what is or is not relevant, and like I think the risk in any of these tools, especially in the CodeRabbit or SonarQube, is that we don't want the noise to outshine the signal. Like it's just if it becomes too noisy, we just turn it off. It's like stop complaining, like stop interrupting all these PRs. But you can tell Korbit this was not useful or this was useful, and it actually remembers context and kind of grows with your organization in like again a secure way that is not leaking our code or our IP to anybody else. And that I think is a feature that is unique to Korbit, or at least in the way that it's implemented is unique to us. And it's super valuable. Like when you you can just dump code into some commercial license of ChatGPT or Claude, which is my preference anyway. But um, it won't remember, that 17 developers before you said this over the last 3 months. And Corbit's pretty good at doing that. So I think, it won me over really fast. The developers have really appreciate that it does, that whether you're senior or junior, you get a different thing out of it. And I think that's unique to the way that corporate approaches this problem, which is valuable.
I think it's also notable. I kind of look at it as a non-technical person from, we don't call our blood centers and our transplant, we don't call them customers. We call them partners because we really are partnering with them to use our software to save lives, and make our software better. And one of the things that I've really liked about working with Corbit that kind of led us to cement you guys as our choice was the fact that I felt from the beginning like we were a partner of Corbit's in both, building out the Bitbucket integration and talking through some of the peculiarities that involve in health tech. It's a different world than if you're doing code for fintech or you're doing code for ed tech or whatever else. And so the fact that Corbit has always been very responsive to us, as Aaron mentioned earlier, we brought you out to our users conference earlier this year because our blood centers want to know more about AI. They want to know what we're doing with it, and they want to know what everybody's doing with it. And being able to say, we've got some experts that we have a relationship with, that could come down, and speak to that, I think just shows that it's not just your standard SaaS situation of we paid the $100 a month and here's your licenses. Enjoy our knowledge base if you want it. Like I've never felt like that has been the relationship we've had with Corbett, and I've really enjoyed it.
That's great to hear. Thanks. You've been using it now for over 9 months, I believe. It's amazing how the time flies. Yeah. How has what improvements have you seen in your SDLC? Like, how do you find things are changing in terms of the way the teams work?
One of our big bottlenecks is PRs and code review for PRs manually by our SSEs and our staff engineers. And depending on the ratio and the feature request list, this can be overwhelming and really burn out our senior engineers. Like I think they just, like I think there was a meeting, a few months ago where it was just like, is this is like an endless loop? I'm never going to get out of it. And there's a lot of frustration. Um, and so like, as a CTO and with my, my like leadership team, you want to try to kind of solve for that problem because your senior engineers, staff engineers should be working on innovation, not code reviews. Like it's not a really good use of money or time. And Corbett kind of creates this light at the end of the tunnel that probably wasn't there before. The amount of code review queue, it just stacks up unless you make some major changes to the process. And like even when you do that, frequently the solution is hire more people, slow down velocity. Um, Corbett allows a lot of things to be caught that PR doesn't have to, or the code review doesn't have to spend time. Our senior engineers don't have to spend time catching those things. And especially because it creates this self-service environment, like I was talking about before. Engineers submit, Corbit gives you feedback, Linting gives feedback, security fixes like Sneak give feedback, and you get a lot of unit tests give feedback. And then it's kind of like, okay, do not submit this until you've passed all these tests. And then now it's like it frees up our more senior resources to do things like innovate and plan and design and architect, which is what I actually want them to do. So yeah, Corbit has created this, and I don't think we would have even thought of this as the solution. Like I think I would have gone the traditional hire more QA, hire more people, slow down velocity. But this kind of creates this new angle where, more less senior developers can do more work in order to prepare their software for development than would have been done otherwise. So I see that as a big win for us. I don't know that there's like we don't have any quantitative data to specify it, but what's cool is you do. Like the Corbit dashboard actually shows a lot of like analytic information that I would never be collecting through Jira tickets, and so that's also kind of like a interesting advantage. Like as Corbit evolves, we get the benefit of any SaaS, which is new features get created, we get to take advantage of it. You already have all our data on how our PRs go. So we're getting a lot of benefit out of it over just 9 months.
Super. I know definitely one of the metrics that we watch closely is like time to merge of like when you from the initial time that a developer picks up a ticket and starts working until it actually gets to prod, like how long does that take? And
Yeah.
what you see a lot is that, there are more and more tools available to help developers move very quickly in the code writing, but that just creates the extra bottleneck and at the code review stage. And so we're really, really trying to solve that problem that other generative AI tools are creating because, yeah, there's lots of amazing tools out there now, to create code, but reviewing code is still very a manual process for a lot of organizations.
Yeah,
Um,
and we look at it as time to like time to commit, right?
yeah,
We like prod is a different cycle
sure.
of stuff in healthcare that are not related to this, but
Let's have a look at questions. In your experience with integrating Korbit, what, if any, types of pushback did you experience and how did you overcome it? I think we touched on this a bit, but do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. The biggest piece of pushback that we had um, was probably people just getting used to the concept that suddenly there would also be all these comments for them to look through. And at first, when you're just used to getting a Teams message from the guy next to you saying, "Hey, you forgot a typo," and suddenly you have the robot posting 8 things on your PR within seconds of you posting the PR, that kind of freak people out a little bit. And then very quickly they started to realize, well, it's not 8 things that you need to deal with. Some of those are not going to be relevant. But if 2 of them are relevant, great. Now you know how to fix them and you can fix them and you didn't have to hear about that from your peer. There's something to be said for, there's the social stigma, or I guess engineering stigma, shame of getting the PR sent back to you, because you in your head you might picture the guy in the cube 3 down from you going, Amir, come on, you really missed that semicolon. And you don't feel shame. The robots cannot be ashamed of you or judge you for choices that you've made or failed to make. And so that, I think, quickly kind of people started to realize, oh, this is great. This actually saves me some. Oh yeah, I know. I can't believe I missed that moments as well.
if you have a CI/CD pipeline, you can just add it to the pipeline. Whether or not anyone even looks at it, that's more of the process. It's kind of like how do you make sure that people actually leverage it and take advantage of it? And like Avery said, it's if you introduce like a couple of champions and like name people in your organization that you know are the friendliest towards tool like that, and they show, oh look, it did this for me, like it spreads like virally almost. And so everybody starts to kind of take advantage of it, but like it doesn't have like a real uh, kind of push back into the integration because you can just add it to the pipeline and then it integrates with Bitbucket and GitHub directly. We use Bitbucket and then just kind of like comments on code reviews and pull requests. And then, you're just like, okay, well, you could disregard that comment if it's useless, but most people see it and kind of like see some value in it and maybe learn a couple of things from it and it starts to become part of the cycle. So I would say it's just in a nice space where you're not going to get a lot of pushback the way that it's
I'll tell you,
designed.
one of the first things that ever happened when we rolled it out, was one of our devs was like, yeah, Corbett made a comment, and I kind of ignored the comment, and Corbett was like, "This is going to crash," and then sure enough, we merged it, and it crashed, and I probably shouldn't ignore Corbett anymore. Like, the
Learn
proof
the
is in
hard
the
way.
pudding, right?
Oh, here's a question just came in. I understand Corbett reviews PRs. Does it Corbett also suggest a fix?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, yes. It's a like it depends on what the issue is specifically, but it does show diffs and kind of talks you through, try this and you should do this. A lot of really cool things that it provides is like readability advice. So, which is which is fascinating. Like, I mean, it's just a cool thing AI does, right? It's, hey, this field's called is active, but like you're flipping it around in Booleans. Stop doing that. It's unreadable. You're like, oh, that is true. That is unreadable. And then, people can fix it without like a long kind of like interruption to the cycle. Like I said, the having it on the automated commit side is so valuable because there are a lot of times where issues like that, especially as it relates to code readability that only affect engineers, would be kind of like, I don't have time for this. We got to release the software. There's a deadline. Like, just we'll let it go. In this case, it's kind of like you're gonna have to, you know, get past that immediately when you submit. You're like, oh, I did something silly. So there's a lot of interesting checks that it
Yeah.
does that
We
help
definitely
people.
see that. I mean, I think it's relevant to a lot of healthcare organizations, more mature, more rigorous teams and code bases seem to appreciate those readability
Yeah,
comments a lot more. I mean, yeah, if you're moving fast and breaking things, then who cares? But especially in the healthcare space, taking the time to make sure that things are tight and
right.
it's part of, I think, part of the culture of in healthcare of like, leave things clean and nice, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, it'll be confusing when you try to analyze it later, for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's ultimately the point. Like we always go back to mission, right? The mission is to do things that improve patient lives, whether that is improving patient safety, whether that is improving patient outcomes. It's all going back to somebody who is having the worst time of their life,
Mhm.
and our software can help turn that around. That's not a thing that we take lightly. And even whether that's on our how we relate to our partners, how we relate to their partners, or how we relate to the software that powers things, um, we want to find the best in class tools to help us do that. And this is part of that.
There's another question for Avery. Since it does suggest a fix, as mentioned, do non-tech individuals go in and make those fixes?
Oh, it's a great question. So we do not have any non-technical individuals that are regular users of Korbit. It's just engineering, DevOps, data engineering, those kind of users. I, as a product manager, I always say I know enough to be useful, but not enough to be dangerous. And
Mhm.
so I have like read-only access to Bitbucket, and I can go look at things and go, "Oh, Korbit actually made a pretty good point there." And really understand like 60% of it, but I can't imagine there's a world in which we would ever let me go, "You're right, Korbit," and try to it's not,
No,
probably not going to
I
happen.
will say that it's something that we've discussed a lot. Like, other tools make it very easy to apply the AI suggested changes. We've intentionally kind of slowed that down just a little bit. We want the developer to think about our feedback and like we make it as easy as possible. It's just click, copy, paste, do it, but we don't want it to just be apply changes. Yeah, go do it because it is important that the developer uh understands the changes that are being applied and that he or she takes responsibility personally for them. Like we feel, from just a software design perspective that, that's an important step of the process, the individual responsibility and not being like, oh, well, the AI decided that's what we should do.
I think there's also an organizational maturity barrier here, which is, like Avery is one of the most talented product people I know, but still no, like just we would not, that's not a thing that non-engineers go and do stuff. Like you need accountability. Your processes need to be documented. Everyone needs to know who is in scope of being able to make a change. Like, we have permissions all over the place. When we do RFPs, these questions get asked pretty specifically. I think there's a point at which AI Corbett isn't a spot. It's like give code review suggestions. It is not change the code or start writing code. And I don't think that that even makes sense for an organization like this one or the last couple I've worked for. So I would say I'm glad it doesn't do that because I think I can't imagine anyone in my position not freaking out if, code reviews or code changes are coming in from everywhere. But, ask me again in 5 years when AI is a lot more mature.
Guys, I appreciate your time today. I
Thanks.
think we will wrap it up there. Again, if anyone in the audience wants to learn more about Corbett or about InVita, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Aaron. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, talk to you soon.